Good morning, Janet. Would you like to give a self-introduction first?
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to answer questions and be available for the Chinese community. I'm Janet Siddiqui, and I've been on the Board of Education since 2007. I'm lived in Howard County over 30 years, and I have been a pediatrician with Johns Hopkins for over 20 years. My campaign and my direction has always been focusing on the whole child and looking at the cognitive, social, emotional, and physical aspects of the whole child. I feel like I've worked well with the community over the past few years. I've represented children, teachers, community members, senior citizens, and students within the community, and I always made my decisions based on the best knowledge possible and in terms of when we look at policy and other decision making. And I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thank you. So my first question is, HoCo and other community organizations would like to initiate an Asian American community roundtable. We would like to invite local elected officials and community leaders to meet with Asian Americans in our community on a routine basis, for example, quarterly. Would you like to participate? Any other thoughts on increasing open communication between HCPSS and the Asian American community parents?
I think this is a wonderful idea. Having a group of leaders within the Asian community that meets periodically with the Board of Education and with the superintendent is a good idea. It's an opportunity to talk about needs of the students and the parents, and to discuss academic achievement, curriculum needs within the schools, community resources, and I welcome this opportunity to have a transparent and open discussion. We currently meet with several other community groups, and we typically meet twice a year, and then in between that, so that it works out to be quarterly, the community group meets separately with the superintendent to see how progress is doing.
Great, thank you. Second question. In the past years, it seems that increasing numbers of students are placed into GT programs. The size of the GT classes is forever growing. At some schools, more than 40% of students are in the GT math. There are also some schools that try to place more students into GT English. The teachers have to slow down the pace to accommodate the students who are struggling in the GT classes. On the other hand, some students feel the class materials are repetitive and they are not being challenged enough in the class. What are your thoughts on this issue?
Well, every student needs to have the opportunity to achieve his or her potential and to be encouraged to challenge themselves without barriers. The percentage of students taking GT courses has increased since we removed the barriers several years ago. We found out several years ago that many students felt inhibited and needed teacher signatures in order to participate. So now we've removed those barriers, which has increased the participation. If teachers need to slow down, then the method of teaching isn't working. We need to work towards concept teaching, critical thinking skills, and students can be based in groups based on their strengths, and this helps the class as a whole. Other things to look at would be, additional resources if a GT course has students with different levels of learning.
So what's your thought on the 40% of students being in the GT class? Is that number too large or too small, or it's good?
I think that it depends on the number of students that can achieve at that level. We may have 40 to 60% of students that are able to achieve the GT level of rigor of coursework. On a certain particular subject, we may have 20%, so I think it varies, but I think what's important is that students have that opportunity to achieve the maximal level of their success within any subject coursework, And if we're finding that we need additional resources to accommodate the number of students that are participating, then we need to address that issue separately.
Question 3. We believe the school system should raise the floor without pulling down the ceiling. It benefits everybody in our community when each student can achieve his or her highest potential. To raise the floor, the school system needs to invest more in the program helping kids who are lagging behind, such as the morning program and the summer program. We would like to hear your plan to improve this program or introduce new initiatives.
There are many ways to approach achievement gaps. Some are systemic and some are more individualized. You start by looking at the individual child and looking at any socioeconomic factors, physical, cognitive, psychological issues that could be impacting the student. Measures of academic progress or MAP testing is our only local assessment that gives teachers feedback on where a student is at a certain moment in time. And this information can give the teacher opportunity to develop an individual plan for a student's academic progress. When you look more systemically or at certain racial or ethnic groups, the BSAP program for Black Student Achievement and the Hispanic Liaisons program have helped substantially. At the school level, base needs principals can develop before and after school programs based on their individual student needs. And special education students' needs are met through their IEP by federal law. Early intervention programs from birth to pre-K and Head Start help those identified early to get services needed. And the elementary school model is showing promise as it looks at many areas that improve student outcomes. World language, music, arts also play a role in academic success. And it's a balance between systemic programs and the individual needs of the students, and looking at the whole child that will continue to help students. We always raise the bar for our students. There's nothing that they can't achieve.
Thank you. Question 4. Many research shows that socioeconomic status instead of race has a bigger impact on students' academic performance. What are your views? If you are elected, how would you evaluate the situation, and how would you make policies to direct resources to the students and families in need?
Poverty does have an impact on student academic performance, and I've worked on this for years with the board and with the county's Community Action Council. The research actually shows that interventions need to start shortly after a child is born into poverty. If you can get a woman or a mother out of poverty, her children will be more academically successful. Also, early identification as young as 9 months can help identify those children at risk for developmental challenges based on their socioeconomic status. Also, critical is the 3 years to 3rd grade children. If you can impact those children, you can make a difference. I've supported full-day pre-kindergarten, and we've been able to do that in our schools at the federal poverty level. Also, the elementary school model addresses many of the components and interventions that impact and improve outcomes at an early age. The model addresses world language at a young age, which improves academic outcomes, telehealth, which keeps our kids healthy and in the classroom, the strengths component that looks at children's strengths rather shortcomings, and teaching methods where teachers teach the area of their own strength.
So just follow up on this one. Is that world language is very important. However, in our county, for world language education, actually it's not widespread in all the schools. So how do you view that? I think, for example, only probably Hispanic is taught in primary school. The Chinese language is not taught, or other language is not, beside English, is not taught in the primary school or elementary school. So how do you think there's opportunity or chance to increase world language in the starting from the primary elementary school?
I agree absolutely that even the research shows that there's a critical age of like the young elementary age in order to master a certain language that you need to start at a younger age. We've done that with the Spanish, trying to integrate it into the elementary school model where they're getting Spanish every single day. We did do a pilot with the Chinese language that didn't work out as well. What I would like to see in the future is possibly, and I'll get to, this isn't another question as well, but looking at different programs where possibly partial immersion or full immersion Chinese language program, because I do think that the Chinese language is a critical world language that our students need to know.
Sure, I think, for example, the Chinese school has a huge participation from the community. We have around 1,000 students in the Chinese school at Howard Community College. We have around 100 in the paying Chinese school, another 100 in the Chinese language school at Columbia. So there's a huge need from the community, which actually learn the Chinese language during the weekend. So I think it's HCPSS try to help or collaborate with the Chinese schools around the county.
Sure.
That will be very helpful.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
And getting Chinese language school teachers that are within the Chinese community certified, at the state requirements, so that we can bring them into the schools and teach.
For myself, I tried to learn Spanish for several semesters from Montgomery College, but because the age is kind of a little difficult, really dive into improve that. But I learned some numbers and the very basic Spanish language, but it's really helpful. I can read some even very basic Spanish newspaper. It's fun. How about question 5? So the school system conducted a survey on religious culture holiday observance. If you are elected, how would you like to use the result of the survey to benefit the HCPSS community?
I'm hopeful that the survey will give us some good data to use as we make decisions about the calendar moving forward. I hope we've had a good representation from across the county and all the religious and ethnic backgrounds. I think the data should guide the board in making thoughtful decisions for both staff and students.
So what is strong opposition, objection to have a more comprehensive inclusion to observe different cultural holidays from your point of view? What is strong opposition from the board or from the staff to try to include more holidays in the school system?
Opposition? I mean, it's challenging from an academic standpoint in terms of the number of days off, scheduling, as we look at other different holidays. In the past year, we included the Lunar New Year. We've always had Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. We included Eid al-Adha and Diwali. And I think this year, I think it's a good balance. I think, there are some equity issues that we do need to look at in terms of all the different diversity and cultures that we have within our community. Then I'm hoping that the data will bring us more information regarding that. But I think if we can, strike a balance, and this actually goes to the next question.
So next question, do you support closing schools on Lunar New Year or Lunar New Year Eve, Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, Eid al-Adha or Diwali, Christmas or Easter? Right.
The Christmas and Easter, those are already sort of state mandated holidays. We've always done Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. I think everyone should have the opportunity to take time to celebrate with family and their friends for their religious or cultural holidays. I think it's important to them and part of their heritage and values, and defines in many ways who they are. I believe in Howard County, there is a great respect for diversity, and the people are open to learn about others' ways and customs. I supported the calendar this year for students, and I think it'll work well, and we look forward to feedback from families as well. I think if we can strike a balance based on academic needs of the school system and taking the opportunity to learn and respect the differences amongst us, I think then we're in a good place. Students and staff should always take advantage of our existing religious policy. That allows for exemptions for students to make up work if they missed a day due to a religious or cultural activity. I
think our community actually thanks your support for including the Lunar New Year into the school calendar. We really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Let's take a short break. I
Sure.
think Jim probably coming soon.
How do you plan to increase Chinese language service and support in Howard County Public Schools?
Well, I think this is an area that the community needs to sit down and have a very detailed discussion. I feel Chinese is a critical world language that our students need for the future. I've always advocated for offerings in our curriculum, and I had the opportunity to visit China in 2014 with the College Board, and I visited 2 schools in Tianjin, and one school we partnered with and the students came to visit in 2015. And while I was there, I learned about other ways to incorporate Chinese language into our curriculum. Since it's such a challenging language to master, I've spoken in the past about the possibility of an immersion program. We're also, the board is looking into a concept school in Howard County, and possibly that would be an opportunity to have a immersion or a partial immersion component that could be within that school. I've seen talented Chinese language teachers within our system that go above and beyond and increase their own participation rates within their classes, and I think that's a great asset as well.
Recently, the River Hill High School canceled its 2017 Chinese AP for in-class teaching, which has a huge impact on the students taking the class and the students who plan to take the class in the future. Just for a reference, over 66% students taking Chinese AP classes there do not have Chinese cultural background. The school system is quickly moving to online teaching, even for world language class or with computerized teaching. How do you view this?
Yeah, it's very difficult. My personal preference remains, in classroom instruction. But in these difficult budget times, the system's looking at alternative ways to offer courses. I have observed the synchronous instruction and was very impressed by the teaching method and how the students interacted and performed. We want all students to have a language opportunity throughout the county, and some of the online course offerings and the synchronous digital offerings, our students have that opportunity. And due to their advanced digital skills, they become very comfortable. I observed it was a course at Reservoir. The instructor was actually at, I believe that time, Centennial High School, and the students at Reservoir were part of the synchronous program, and they were using their phones, iPads. We observed on big screen too, the teacher and that sort of method, and they loved it, and they were they're so digitally they're even FaceTiming with other students within the class, and it was good, nice integration of technology and teaching.
So they can interact with each other?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So are you aware other world languages being taught online or just Chinese language they're trying to move?
Languages online, that's probably one of our more critical needs in terms of teachers, most of the schools offer the standard European languages, but I believe that's the only one that we've done so far. Maybe German, I'm not sure, I don't want to say for sure, but one of the critical languages that we've been trying to do with more the digital, based on, we may only have a few students at one school that are interested, several more at another school, and trying to balance those needs and do that sort of integrated digital synchronized classroom.
Okay.
And I know Ms. McKinley was going to follow up or meet with the group.
Yes, I sent an email to both the board and the school system, and the teacher said we'll have a meeting on September 6th,
In September. Okay.
Tuesday, and 7:30 at River Hill High School.
Okay.
So we'll talk about the issue. I hope in the future,
Okay.
when they make a decision, they will think about that. For example, they should inform the community before they make decisions. And it's kind of just top-down decision. There's no way to have a discussion before they make a final decision. So it's
Right.
kind of,
Better
very
communicate.
rushed decision.
We can always improve in better communication, absolutely.
what's your plan to increase the transparency for a budget plan and the general decision-making process?
Well, I think we need to have a year-long budget process that involves the community, and it starts way before the budget presentation itself. I want to see many stakeholders throughout the community involved. And when I first came on the board, we had, it was called What Counts in Education Forum. It was held in the fall before the superintendent prepared her budget, and there were about 250 people in the room from across the county, different communities, schools, business, ethnic groups, and it was opportunity to see all at once, everyone's priorities and, how thinking about ways to trying to implement them before the budget even comes out. I think that's a better way to start way ahead versus then trying to make many changes when, budget presentation comes out. There's a short period of time between, January and March where we have to, get our budget into the county executive. So I think having an earlier process that involves all the stakeholders in the fall is a better way to get people involved, and be transparent.
There used to be a community committee to participate in the whole process. Now I know there's no community input before the budget comes out. I don't know how.
Well, there's lots of opportunities for people to give input. We used to have the operating budget review committee, but it wasn't bringing it, in terms of the structure of it, it wasn't bringing back the value that the board needed in terms of making decisions, in terms of people participating. They can email us. There were budget forums that the superintendent held to get feedback, and then also our regular public forum where people could come and speak to the board in person. So there's many opportunities for people to get in touch with us and let us know what their feelings were. But my experience with my representatives on the operating budget review committees, because each member of the board could submit a person to be on the committee, as well as there was union representation and some a few community random members. My representatives came back to me that it was very difficult to work with that operating budget review committee, and the information that was coming back to the board we weren't getting value. There were a few years where we were getting value, but the past few years we hadn't been getting the value that we wanted from the committee. So either looking at another type of committee, or looking at something similar to what I suggested about starting earlier and getting feedback from more people within the community, I think is a good way.
What's your opponent say? For example, you said it's difficult to work with with that committee. What's the reason it's so difficult to work with that committee to get some useful feedback to the board?
Oh, it wasn't. It was the committee itself that couldn't get to certain decisions that the board requested information. The board would ask them to look at these certain things, and the dynamics within the committee itself weren't getting to a point where they were giving good information to the board.
So you see the information feedback to the board is kind of useless.
Right. There was one year we had really good feedback. Might have been 2010 or 11, but a lot of it depends on the members at the time and the dynamics of the committee. But maybe we need to look at a better charter for a certain committee in terms of the what the board wants to see back. Again, it's a short period of time that they have to look at. They would meet once a week, early in the morning, between January and I think for a month or so. And once the superintendent gave her report back, and so it's a short period of time to look at it in detail, get the information, and get good feedback back to the board. So I would like to see a more year-long process that involves a broader community of stakeholders and start earlier in the budget season.
How many schools and teachers have you visited in the past 12 months? How many parents or parents groups have you met in the past 12 months? In your assessment, what are their main concerns?
Well, every year the board has assignments in terms of clusters. So I've visited all my cluster schools during the past year, as well as other ones based on other things that are going on in the community or activities or events. The board schedules a meeting with many community groups. We regularly meet with the Community Advisory Council. That's the only committee that reports directly to the board. PTA Council, Council of Elders, Conexiones, Student Health Council meets annually, Special Education, and many others on an as-needed basis. And we're looking forward to the Asian community group to meet with us as well. Issues vary depending on what's going on in the community, and sometimes based on individual groups' own interests. Usually resources, especially when I visit schools with the principals or teachers, resources are always a big issue. Course offerings, eliminating achievement gaps, reflections on certain policies like the grading policy, personnel changes, lists goes on, but most importantly, I think everyone wants the best educational opportunities for their children in a safe and positive environment. So I think the concerns differ from school to school, even when we have the PTA council meetings and they have an opportunity to ask questions of the board. One school may have a specific concern and others, that's not an issue at their school. So, there are things that are systemic, within all the schools, but then also within individual schools, there are issues as well.
So this summer will be a little different because the county didn't approve the full budget request from HCPSS, and I heard a lot of parents or teachers complain because they're staff cutting or kind of hour cut. And did you hear anything from the community about this issue during the summer?
Here and there, we've heard different things from the community. Things have been brought up to the central office. I know it's difficult, and this isn't the first time we've had to do this. There's been years in the past, even when my kids, were at a very young age, even before I was on the board. I remember difficult budget times, things had to be cut. One of the things that they're doing is, certainly certain groups, it's been across the board, but, priorities are at-risk groups in terms of, making sure special education has all their resources that they need. If there's a particular item it's coming that a teacher really thinks that they need, or the school thinks that they need, it's coming to, central office to review, and there's a process in place that if something that they think is really critical, then they'll come to the central office for review and see if anything that can be done, any accommodations, look for other places where they could pull the money.
So one follow-up question. The budget for the next year actually is around 4% increase over the last year. So, but the HCPSS still said that's not enough. How much increase annually do you expect for the school budget?
Well, one of the things that it's not just an increase that you have to look at. Over the past 4 or 5 years, we've gradually taken on a bigger burden of state pension costs, and now we're at the full amount in terms of it's 17 million or more a year that we've absorbed in terms of the pension costs. The other issue that I think was misunderstood during the whole budget process was what we negotiated in terms of teacher salaries in 2014-15. That salary started mid-year, and then the full amount came forward for this year. So that was an additional 12 million that hadn't been in the budget in the past. And then plus what we negotiated for this upcoming year with the union, which was another, several tens of thousands, there are millions. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but another additional 12 to 20 million dollars in salaries for the upcoming year. So that set the base very high. So it wasn't just, an additional, 4% over last year. There's additional monies that we really needed in terms of salaries and benefits for our teachers.
Yeah, based on what we've heard is that the increase the school system asked for is much bigger than previous years. And what approved by the county, the increase is about same as previous years. So,
what we asked for and what we got, that's a big difference. We did a lot of different things that the board wanted to see. We wanted to expand the elementary school model. We had put in, to expand world languages over the next 5 years. We wanted a coordinator of diversity and inclusion. We wanted more, more co-teaching models or, different positions that we wanted to see. So yeah, what we asked for from the county was much more than in the past, because we felt these needs were critical. We didn't get what we needed. We cut most of that out. We're, back to bare minimum in terms of trying to meet our obligations to, teachers and their salaries. But yeah, so it is very tight this year.
Yeah, I've heard from parents that each school was asked to cut, some personnel staff to accommodate the budget. And the class size is increasing because of this.
Yeah, I didn't vote for the class size. Across the board, their staff was at, I think, 0.5 positions. Each school was asked to, cut by. Where there's a freeze right now in terms of hiring or positions that can become available. And we've done this in the past as well. Each position, when someone leaves a position, we look at the position and say, is it a critical need, yes or no? And or certainly if someone does leave right now and it is a critical need, then they'll fill that position. But each position is being looked at very critically in terms of its need. And I don't support larger class size. I think we need to find other ways in terms of making sure that obligations and trying to balance our needs.
Okay, so next question. Did I skip some?
10.
No.
Question 10.
Oh, I did. I've
Yeah, we
already
did
answered
10.
this. Yeah. Move to 11. Yeah, 11. There are many Asian students and Latino students in our school systems. Some schools have high proportion of Asian students and some have high proportion of Latino students. Outside school time, their foods are primarily the food associated with their culture. Do you know whether school meals have these options? What would you do if the meals do not have such options?
There have been many new initiatives coming from the food service staff over the past few years. We have a new director of food service in the past few years, and he's been amazing. He has a good team of grant writers and looking for other opportunities to change our menu for the better. He's worked with the federal and nutritional guidelines, and there's been grant opportunities for Rethink Lunch offerings, which are healthier options for fruit and salad bars at the elementary schools. Instituted the NutriSlice menu on the website that showcases the menu in different languages. You can see the menu in Chinese. And you can also filter for dietary needs, gluten-free, allergies, dairy-free. There have been a few high schools that I know of. I can't know the specifics, but I know we've talked about it before. That have looked at ethnic options and Asian options. And I think what this is a good opportunity to really hear the student voice and get the students involved and what choices they would like to have. I think they would have good options for our menu and reflect the diversity of our student population. So I think with our new student board member, the great person we have in food and nutrition services and students in general, getting them involved. And I think we can certainly look at that in the future in terms of more options, ethnic options.
Okay.
So we take a short break.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
HCPSS gives out 3 POC tests and 2 or 3 MAP tests each year. It consumes many hours of instruction time. How are your views on this standardized test?
Actually, Howard County is probably one of the lowest testing counties in the state. We did do a review and we got the data from across the state. We actually had to submit our data to the state because there was a committee that was looking at testing, and ours was one of the lowest in terms of testing. The park is still in an evaluation period, and it's being looked at the state and federal level, and I'm not sure which direction that goes. I don't necessarily support testing for no reason. I do think that parents, to a certain extent, need to know where their child is and have an assessment that's of value, that is going to give direction to the student, to the teacher, and to the parent. And I think what we've been doing with MAP testing, although any implementation of any new program is always challenging, has kinks and needs to be worked out, but I think the value that the MAP testing does give is important, because the way it tests it gives feedback to the teacher so that they can readjust their curriculum for that student in terms of where they need to be. And I think that is in itself will help us also in terms of eliminating achievement gaps.
Now, the MAP test was designed to measure progress of each student, and it's designed for teachers to know where the strengths and weaknesses of the students. Mm-hmm. But when I asked my teachers in my daughter's school, and a lot of them don't know how to use the MAP test to guide them through their class instruction. So I don't know whether it's a training problem. The school plans to provide them more training, or it's the design of the map really cannot serve the purpose. What?
All right. I think that if that's the issue, then we need to take that back to our central office and let them know that that's going on. I know there is professional development for the teachers that's going on. I don't know the exact plan and how they're rolling all of that out, but there has been professional development and ongoing professional development in terms of the teachers' ability to use the test and use it effectively. So I think yes, training and using a tool correctly is absolutely important when it comes to our students' success. So I'll take that back and look at that.
Okay.
So I have another question. It's not from the list. So I think during this primary election, and a lot of community members think the school board actually too cozy with the staff or Dr. Foods, right? Said it's got a rubber stamp, anything she requests, and then basically the board approves that. A lot of people have complained on that. How do you feel that?
Well, I think our governance, the board's governance is, and we hired the superintendent to do a certain job and certain task, and and we expect the superintendent to bring back policies or initiatives that we want to move forward for all our students to have academic success. So when we the way our governance works in terms of policy, and that's the most, policy and budget are two of the most important issues that the board has to govern itself. And when we have a policy committee that's formed and involves a community of stakeholders, they bring back their guidelines to the superintendent. We expect that the superintendent bring a policy that reflects all the needs, and we would hope that we would say, yes to that policy. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes we need to tweak it and make changes. So I think we had set certain goals and expectations of the superintendent. She's met them. We reevaluate every year and set new goals, and based on what the feedback has been, within the community and within what's happened in terms of academic progress for our students.
So besides the BOE board, right? So we can see there are two groups. Sometimes vote 5 to 7, 5 to 4, or 5 to 2, or 4 to 3. How do you actually think about the way to improve the efficiency of the board?
Well, I think every board member, has been elected there to represent the community, and I think you take, the information that's, provided by staff and the superintendent. You take the information that you hear from your community, and you take your own knowledge and you do your own research in terms of, what the issue is, and you make a decision that you feel represents the school system and the community in the best way possible. Agreeing to disagree and hearing people's different opinions are good.
Sure.
We want to have a dynamic discussion. We want to hear all the pros and cons of an issue. But when it comes to your vote, it's your individual vote in terms of what you feel is the best for the school system. And
so it's kind of following up question. So, for example, we got a lot of 4 to 3 votes or 5 to 2 votes. Does that mean the community actually is a little divided? That's the reality?
I don't. If you have everybody agreeing, is that the right thing too? I don't know. If you have a board that completely agrees with everything, I'm not always sure that that's that's the best thing either. I think, and sometimes we're all in different directions. Sometimes it's 3-2, and sometimes you think one person is going to vote one way and they vote another way, and you don't understand. So it varies. I think. I think we all have our certain opinions. We all have our certain backgrounds. We all look at things maybe it's slightly differently, but I think that's healthy. I think that's a healthy discussion. But but you take what you hear, you take what you've learned, you hear the different opinions, and then you make your decision. Not a group's decision. You make your own individual decision as a board member.
Because I'm myself on the CA board, right? So sometimes I'm thinking like yes, or divided vote or very uniform vote is good or bad. It's kind of really difficult to balance between different topics.
Sure. I mean, there were times when I was on the Board of Education, and it was always 7 people agreeing, and then people were still saying we were rubber stamping, and so I'm not sure that I think if a board member does their due diligence and makes an informed decision, I think that's the most important thing, and they can sleep well at night.
Your turn.
Oh, I do have some questions, but
You want off topic?
yes.
So
please.
how about
I
you
think
have
we're
a
done with the formal
Sure.
interview. Yeah.
Okay. How about I have a closing statement?
Sure. Thank you for this opportunity to communicate with the Chinese community. I appreciate all your questions, and I've been on the board. I think my experience, my ability to work with different communities and people of different backgrounds is one of my strengths. I always put students first in terms of my decision making, and I feel my background as a pediatrician as well gives me knowledge that is valuable for the school system, and I look forward to meeting you in the future, and I hope the Chinese community will vote for me.
Well, yeah, well.
Okay, thank you.